As he shot through his gate, his watch read 21:30. Impact. The ladder on which John was standing began to shake, causing him to miss the nail and deliver a good rap on his left index finger. Ouch! Damn it, he snarled, then realized that it was not only the ladder that was shaking, but the house as well. John! Anne anxiously shouted up from below where she was attempting to steady the ladder. What's happening? Why is the ground shaking? He'd never had to cope with seismic activity before, so it took a moment for him to beat down the reptilian cortex panic reaction he felt and get himself back under control. The shaking wasn't intensifying, but it wasn't dying down either. Ground shock from the impact, he shouted down at Anne. It moves faster than the tsunamis, so we're feeling it now. Thank God we're not closer to Bermuda, or it might be strong enough to do some damage. If it doesn't get any worse than this, we should be okay. Almost as if in reaction to his words, the shaking began to subside. He could hear the motor sounds of the tractor as his father drove it into the barn. He'd been watching a rising black cloud in the far northeast. They hadn't actually seen the impact. He suspected that anyone close enough to have seen it clearly would soon be dead. What they could see still filled him with dread as the cloud front visibly grew larger and larger, closer. It looked like an approaching Ragnarok. Fear drove him onwards, and he readdressed the nail he'd been hammering. He, his father, wife, and daughter had largely removed everything that might blow in a hurricane wind. This late into hurricane season, they did not leave a lot laying around, so it didn't take them long. He'd become concerned that the antenna mast might not hold if the winds rose above 100 miles an hour, so he was running and anchoring extra reinforcing cable to strengthen it. Their livestock was now secure in the barn, and his father was moving the last of whatever outside equipment remained under shelter. He thought they'd have the place as secure against violent weather as they could make it, and prayed they wouldn't catch a tornado. Once finished with his task on the roof, they all fell to in the garden and began harvesting everything that was mature or that would ripen after picking. There wasn't any way to really protect the garden or orchard. It would all just have to take its chances. At impact plus 2 hours, the approaching storm front filled half the sky with a darkness so intense that it made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. With nothing left to harvest, he set Anna and Melinda to processing the produce they wouldn't be eating fresh. John and his father Robert set to cleaning, sanitizing, and filling empty barrels with drinking water. No one was sure how long it would be before the atmosphere would clean itself of salt, mud, and other debris and be okay to drink. At impact plus 3 hours, they all went inside and sat down to rest in front of the small household television. Helicopters belonging to many different media organizations were in the air watching the East Coast. Most of the best roads in the Florida Peninsula run in a north-south direction. The better to move tourists and freight. What east-west roads there were never intended to handle even a remote fraction of the traffic that was trying to use them now. State, county, and municipal emergency services and road departments were going to heroic efforts to keep the traffic flowing. Wherever a car stalled, it was quickly pushed off the road by others behind it, and the stranded occupants divided among the remaining cars. Heavy equipment had been moved to bridges and overpasses to push stalled vehicles over the side. Anything to keep the traffic moving. A network feed showed a veritable armada of boats of every sort of description going to sea from the Florida Keys. The larger craft were heading out into the open ocean to ride out the wave in deep water, while the smaller were making for the mainland Gulf Coast as fast as they could make it, which wouldn't be fast enough for many. The approaching storm front grew ever larger. A knock on the front door proved to be from his neighbor, Mike, who was standing there with his wife, brother, and 3 teenage children. "We thought we'd see if you needed help with anything getting ready," Mike offered. "Looks like you're pretty squared away, though. You've got a better rig than I do. Heard anything about the tsunami yet?" John invited them all in. "Nope, not yet. We just finished a little while ago and sat down to watch it. Y'all come in and join us." As everybody was getting settled, he took down his best bottle of 10-year-old bourbon and a tray of glasses. He poured a good shot into each, then handed them out, including Melinda and Mike's boys, who took theirs wide-eyed with wonder. John said by way of explanation, "In the Gaelic, from which the word whiskey comes to us, it translates as the water of life. If we are to be overcome by the waters of the deep, I thought it only fitting that we who have come together here should share, perhaps for the last time, a taste of the water of life. As we drink and it burns deep within us, let us remember that life too still burns within us until the waves roll over us." A helicopter-borne television crew caught the wave with a long-distance lens as it suddenly erupted from the ocean depths and climbed skyward. John reached up from his chair and took down the King James Bible from its shelf. The rapidly approaching wave overtook the Jacksonville skyline and washed over it. Another taste of the strong whiskey, and John began to read aloud. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters."